It was at the Olympics here in London last year that a relatively low-profile private security company called G4S came to public attention. The company received an avalanche of bad press when it failed to provide enough guards to cover the event, a hole that in the end was plugged by the British Armed Forces. G4S's business stretches far and wide, from transporting cash from stores to banks to stewarding big live events such as the Rolling Stones concert that was held here in Hyde Park earlier in the year. Well, Andrew Hill, our management editor, is with me now, and he's been looking at the company in a bit more detail. Andrew, the tagline that G4S uses is securing your world. That's not actually too far from the truth, is it?
No, it isn't. I mean, G4S is a large company. We reckon it is probably in the top 3 of private sector employers, excluding state companies. And it has operations in 115 countries, 620,000 employees. It is one of the biggest companies in the world for staffing, but also a company which has got itself into all sorts of different sectors of security.
Is it too big to manage? I mean, it's former Chief Executive Nick Buckles, he left in May. Is it a sign that it's become too much of a giant, too big to handle?
Well, I think that's one of the questions I've been looking at. I think the answer is no, it's not necessarily too big to manage. It essentially is run on a series of contracts. They're managed at local level. The contract negotiation is one of the things that the company is very good at. But it has over the years devolved a lot of responsibility to these local elements. Some of the contracts are very simple, security guarding being one of them, except in the case of a massively complex event like the Olympics in a one-off situation. But some of them are more complex and certainly more sensitive. They've moved in recent years into an area that they call care and justice, which includes working on the front line alongside police officers in Britain, managing prisons in South Africa, Britain and other countries, and taking them into some areas of public services that are by definition very sensitive.
Services which we're more used to the state providing. Do you feel that this sort of trend is going to continue? I mean, is this something the public are going to be happy with?
Well, they're beginning to get some pushback. They've had some big incidents that have threatened their reputation, including allegations that they deny of mistreatment of prisoners in South Africa, for example. They're being subject to a criminal investigation in the United Kingdom about electronic tagging and whether they overcharged for electronic tagging of prisoners in the UK. So their global brand is starting to backfire somewhat. The influence of some of these issues on the future of outsourcing and decisions that governments might make on outsourcing could be quite profound.
But none of this bad publicity is at the moment deterring governments from using them.
It hasn't, but there is some evidence more generally that outsourcing in some developing countries, for example, which is a big target market for G4S, has begun to slow or stall. They're no longer under the same pressure, those countries, to privatise and outsource. And so one of the key premises of G4S's future expansion may be threatened, particularly if governments start to get a little bit anxious about the G4S brand and reputation.
And what about regulation? I mean, there's obviously big transparency issues here.
Yeah, the National Audit Office, the UK government watchdog in here, has started to look into this and issued a report this week saying that there were questions about the transparency of such contracts, and said they want to explore further whether it really is in the public interest to have this market, this very sensitive market of public services, concentrated in so few hands. Internationally, campaigners are calling for the United Nations to have some form of global supervision of security companies. But I think one of the issues that's pretty clear and that the new chief executive has taken on board is he's going to impose more controls, but at the same time this is a company that is working, as he puts it, doing difficult things in difficult places, and some things will happen. Occasionally things will go wrong, and that will lead to the kind of high-profile problems that they face, almost no matter how much control is imposed.
A mammoth task indeed. Andrew, thank you very much.